All right, the U.S. trade delegation is in New Delhi till the 28th of March for trade talks ahead of the reciprocal tariffs kicking in from the 2nd of April. China, Canada, and Mexico have responded to the Trump threat of tariffs. The U.S. has also warned of 25% tariffs on countries that are importing crude oil from Venezuela. India, too, imports some degree of oil from Venezuela. India and the U.S. are hoping to increase bilateral trade to $500 billion by 2030, as was announced by the Prime Minister. They're hoping to sign a bilateral trade agreement within the calendar year of 2025 itself. Government sources on the visit of the U.S. trade delegation, led by Assistant Trade Representative to New Delhi for trade talks, India and U.S. will be finalizing the contours, the negotiation schedule, and the terms of reference for the proposed bilateral trade agreement, the BTA. The BTA will be finalized in two tranches. The first phase expected to focus on goods and the second on services. Need to look at each other's strengths, weaknesses, and sensitivities while trying to find common ground. More clarity is expected by the end of the week. The current talks are not the first round of negotiations, insists the Indian side. Proposed BTA will bring more predictability in tariffs and regulation. The BTA is expected to create synergy for two-way trade and investment. The U.S. has sought greater market access in certain industrial goods, automobiles, wines, and agriculture. India may seek duty cuts in labor-intensive sectors like textiles. Separately, ahead of the delegation's visit, Reuters is reporting that India is willing to concede duties or lower duties in those areas which will affect about $23 billion of U.S. imports into India. Now, Trump has famously called tariffs the most beautiful word in the dictionary, and that April 2nd would be America's Liberation Day. He's wasted no time in targeting many of America's major trading partners, including India. Hence, it's going to be a tightrope walk for India to navigate this new trade environment. High tariffs on specific items, it's not unique just to India. In fact, India's average tariff on U.S. goods is about 17%. It is lower than some other countries, but it is higher than some others as well. India is open to reducing tariffs through this free trade agreement or the bilateral trade agreement, which both sides are hoping to sign by the fall. India's tariffs are widespread and they fit into a global pattern. They're very much within the WTO framework. High tariffs are part of a broader economic strategy to protect local industry and local agriculture, more importantly. Let's take a look at the trade between India and the United States and the U.S. trade deficit, which Trump seems to have a lot of problem with. Under Trump in 2017, in the first Trump term, the trade deficit was $22.9 billion. In 2018, it reduced a bit, $21.1 billion. In 2019, it went up to $23.7 billion. In 2019, again, it was around that same level at $23.7 billion. In 2020, it went up to $24 billion. Under 4 years of Biden, it suddenly went up. The trade deficit was $33.5 billion in 2021, $38.6 in 2022, $43.3 in 2023, and in 2024, it stood at a record of $45.7 billion, which is Trump's pet peeve. Now, the trade relationship between India and the U.S. continues to grow. Total trade in 2024 reached $129 billion. India maintains a trade surplus with U.S. imports from India exceeding the exports of American goods into India. The trade relationship between India and the U.S. continues to grow. Like I said, total trade was $129 billion. The United States exported goods worth $41 billion to India in 2024. It covered sectors like minerals, fuels, machinery, and aircraft parts. India's exports to the U.S. stood at $87.4 billion, driven largely by pharmaceuticals, gems and jewelry, textiles, and refined petroleum. India exporting far more to the U.S. than the other way around. The trade deficit for America, from America's point of view, stands at $45.7 billion. The United States happens to be one of India's top trading partners, playing a crucial role in commodities and high-value goods. In 23-24, the U.S. exported a diverse range of products to India, including minerals, fuels, machinery, aircraft, and precious metals. These exports contribute significantly to bilateral trade and strengthens economic ties between both countries. The U.S. is a crucial supplier of mineral fuels, including crude oil and LNG, to India. With an export value of about $14 billion, it plays a key role in energy trade relationship. The tariff on these imports remains relatively low. India is a significant importer of precious stones and metals from the U.S. The current export value is a little over $7.5 billion. Tariffs depend on the specific type of metal or gemstone. Machinery exports from the U.S. to India form a crucial part of the trade relationship, an export value of $5.5 billion. The tariff ranges between 7.5% and 10%. The aerospace sector remains a vital area of US-India trade. Aircraft and aircraft parts valued at $3.2 billion. The tariff stands at 5%.
An American delegation is in New Delhi till the 28th of March for trade talks between both the countries. This comes after India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal have already visited the US. The discourse around tariff wars and threats of reciprocal tariffs is also turning shriller, with China, Canada and Mexico responding hawkishly to the American threats. Recently, the US had also warned of 25% tariffs on countries importing crude oil from Venezuela, which may include countries like China and India. Meanwhile, India and the US aim to increase their bilateral trade to $500 billion by 2030 by signing a bilateral trade agreement or a BTA within 2025 itself. Here is a roundup of what is there on the agenda and how India is placed like. In the current visit of the American delegation to India, both the sides are going to finalize the contours, the negotiation schedule and the terms of reference of the proposed BTA between both the countries. It is likely to be finalized in two tranches, with the first phase expected to focus on issues pertaining to goods trade. This is not the first round of negotiations, but what we have learned so far is that the US has sought greater market access in certain industrial goods, automobiles, wines and agriculture, whereas India may seek duty cuts in labor-intensive sectors like textiles. Both the countries are expected to look at each other's sensitivities while trying to find a common ground to create synergy for two-way trade and investments, as well as predictability in tariffs, regulations and economic integration. More clarity is expected on these talks by the end of this week, as both the sides sit on the negotiation table to begin charting out the contours. As on date, reciprocal tariffs have not been applied by the US on India. Both the countries plan to negotiate a mutually beneficial multi-sector BTA to enhance and broaden bilateral trade ties. As per the government data which has been submitted in Parliament, India's simple average tariff rate is 17% and the simple average agricultural tariff was 39% and 13.5% for industrial goods in 2023. However, effective tariff rates were much lower due to several notifications issued by the government. Also, post the Union Budget 25-26, the industrial tariff had reduced to 10.6%. Tariffs or import duties are usually applied to check dumping and to protect local industry and jobs. Also, India has traditionally kept sectors like dairy and agriculture outside the ambit of trade deals to protect the interests of small and marginal farmers in comparison to industrial scale imports and competition. However, the US till now has been keen on negotiating on all aspects of trade, which will also include dairy and agriculture. While the US has indicated that reciprocal tariffs will kick in from the 2nd of April onwards, India's Commerce Ministry has maintained that the trade investigation which usually leads to such reciprocal tariffs is likely to go on till the 1st of April, which means that imposition of reciprocal tariffs may not begin immediately. Also, India is in midst of assessing the positives and negatives as far as the impact of US tariffs is concerned, as tariffs on many other countries may also come as an opportunity for Indian exporters. As India is engaged in stakeholder consultation, the Commerce Ministry has maintained that it is going to take an appropriate action at the right time to help Indian exporters reap benefits from the trade agreement. It remains to be seen how early the contours are going to be drawn out between both the countries and how early the negotiations are going to begin. That is something which remains to be seen. Also, several international developments which are taking place about the threat of tariffs, the threat of reciprocal tariffs, are also likely to have some degree of impact on the trade investigation which is happening and also on the future trade talks.